Welcome to the Natural Healing Reel. I'm Jackie, and my guest today is a CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization. She's created a brand new course that's a 7-step program that she's going to unfold and explain to us how you can get back up and survive after trauma. Suicides, multiple deaths, just lots of trauma. And she's a living example of that. So I'd like to welcome you to the Natural Healing Reel. How are you, Janet?
Thank you. I am doing great.
Janet Grillo.
From sunny Florida.
Her full name, excuse me, there. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our conversation today. I have also had multiple trauma and it's quite a process. And so I really applaud you for doing this work and for then sharing, because we need to share this work because people are all kind of going through, I think, deep, multiple situations that are quite intense. And I don't know that we're geared up to handle what is coming at us these days. So it feels to me. You know, you feel like we're the only one, but we're not.
Unfortunately, it feels that way to a lot of people.
That's right. That's my point. We're not alone, right?
No,
we are. Yeah. So let's get started. Where are we going to survive? Where are we going to start today with your book or your course? Why don't you just take the bike?
Okay. I think probably the best place to start is my book. But before that, you wonder, how did it even become a book? So let me just tell you a little bit about my story.
I'd love that.
Okay. Okay. On December 13th, 2001, my husband died tragically. I don't know if it was a suicide, assisted suicide, suggested suicide, or murder. After he died, I found out that he was living a double life with alleged connections to the Philadelphia Mafia. So allegedly, I was a mafia wife and I did not know it. 55, wow. I know, really. 55 family members of his walked away from me after the last shovel of dirt was pitched upon his grave. So I was kind of left to fend for myself. I'm thinking, like, who is this man that I was married to for 15 years? We were actually together for 18 years, but who was this man that I lived with that called me twice a day and told me he loved me? I lived a beautiful life. You know, we had the Mercedes, the country club. We traveled around the world. I had my own business as a fine jewelry and diamond broker. So I was dripping in diamonds and pearls and gold. So I played the role of a mafia wife, but I had no idea that I was a mafia wife in that sense. That was a part of his life that certainly was kept secret. But then after he died, I tried to kind of almost do a cold case investigation. You know, I was all alone. I was by myself. I didn't know what to do. I found myself in a fetal position. I wanted to find Janet, but there was nowhere for Janet to be found. And, you know, and I had a lot of questions. It was like, how could I make sense of it all? You know, and where was God and why would he let that happen? And I thought, well, what use was there in going on? And also, too, was I wondered if I could ever find hope and joy again. And I also was wondering if I had any purpose to my life anymore, or had it gone to the grave with my husband. So it was a long time in pulling myself together, but I started keeping a journal probably about the second month after he passed away.
What year was that again? Did you say?
Believe it or not, it was 2001. December 13th, 2001. So a very long time.
December 13th. Interesting.
And that was actually Friday the 13th, you know, right before the Christmas holidays. So, you know, what I did is I ended up pulling everything together and I wrote a book, and I published the book in 2018, and it was self-published, and it was the same title, God Promised Me Wings to Fly, but the subtitle was There Is Life After Suicide. And so then after I had that out there for a while, I had the opportunity to speak with Terry Whalen. He's an acquisitions manager for Morgan James Publishing Company. And so they picked me up for this book. Plus I had another book that I wrote that has never been published yet. And so Terry said, well, send me both of the copies and we'll give it to someone to read over it. And they came back 2 weeks later and they offered me 2 book contracts, one for my God Promised Me and one for the other book called My Victory Journal. So he connected me with an amazing editor. And after she read my book, she started out by saying, okay, well, we're going to forget chapters 1, 2, and 3. We're going to start with 4. She said, because you tell people up front that he died, and it was a suicide and things like that. So what we did is I rewrote my book in the first person with her help. So in order for me to write it, I had to relive it, which was a very challenging thing to do. So this time, the book starts out the night before, when of course I didn't know, or the day before I didn't know anything about what was happening at all. So that was kind of a little bit of traumatizing in itself, because you're creating dialogue of what you think you remember or thought you remember or hoped you remembered or something like that. So anyway, the book kind of unfolds. So it unfolds like a mystery. I tell people in my book what my thought process, what happened. Then I tell them what I'm thinking about. In some cases, I might, want to come back with vindictive feelings towards people, but I knew that that was not the way to go as far as that's concerned. But the bottom line, what people will discover in my book is that I tried to heal myself on my own without success. And it wasn't until I finally fell on my knees and surrendered my life to God that I said, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am. Janet's nowhere to be found. You take it, because I just can't do it anymore. And I kept surrendering myself over and over. And as that happened, just small miracles happened here and there. So it was crazy, because one of the things that I would have, I fell into a state of depression. I had anxiety attacks. I had my own suicidal thoughts, but that didn't last very long because I wouldn't put my daughter through that. Although my husband was not my daughter's father, but I still wouldn't put her, through that. So that was just probably the easy way out for that split minute thinking. And I just said, and then finally I just woke up one day and said, there is no way in hell that God would make me go through this much pain without having something wonderful on the other side, even if I didn't know what that wonderful was. And of course, faith is hope unseen. And so the crazy thing is that one day, anything can set you off into an asthma attack, or not an asthma attack, a panic attack, an anxiety attack. And one of the times I was driving my car and the song Hello by Lionel Richie came on. It was my husband's and my song. So I was driving my car and I had an anxiety attack. I ended up in the church parking lot, where my husband and I attended, but I was not a member. He was Catholic and I wasn't. I just attended with him, 2 or 3 times a month, something like that. Looking at the church and looking at the rectory, and had every intention to go into the church and pray, and God led me to the rectory instead. So I went over there and I banged on the door like a crazy woman, screaming and begging for help. And the woman came to the door and she says, I'm sorry, no one's here to help you, and I collapsed in the doorway. The Monsignor came running. He saw the condition that I was in and he canceled his appointment for that day, because certainly this disheveled basket case of a woman was more that needed his help more than anything else did that day. So we ended up talking for about 3 hours. He said to me that he didn't know if becoming a Catholic or going to the RCIA classes were about to start. And so the RCI classes are the rite of Christian initiation classes where adults go to become Catholic. He said, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but it's a good place to start because I had a tremendous problem with trust. I mean, my whole life was built on a lie. So now all of a sudden, who can I trust? And so I went into the classroom with about 12 other people. Many of them were broken like me, but some of them had already experienced the amazing powers of God and talked about their miracles. And I went, I need some of that. And so basically it was just taking baby steps. And so I ended up becoming a Catholic. I ended up sitting perpetual adoration in the chapel of our church. And perpetual adoration is where you would sit one-on-one with the Blessed Sacrament. They have a large host that sits in front of you. It sits in a pedestal, a monstrance or ostensor, I think it's called there. And it's just you and God one-on-one. And so I started writing in a journal, Dear God, hear my prayers. And about after 6 months, I said, I wonder what he would say if he said something to me. So I turned to the back of my journal and I wrote on the top, Dear Janet, and on the bottom I wrote, Love God. I said, empty lines waited patiently while I waited anxiously to see if it was crazy or profound. And about after a half an hour, my hand just started to move, but I wasn't aware of what I was writing.
Automatic writing.
Automatic, yeah. So it was the craziest thing. But in my book, I share some of the letters that I wrote to God, some of the letters that God wrote back to me. So my husband died in 2001, but the letter that stands out to me that really was a turning point for me was dated June 18th, 2004. And it simply says, know that I've chosen you to do a special task for me. One, I don't want you to take very lightly. One day you will write a book. And when that time comes, we will write it together. Through our words, you will bring many people to me. It'll be a great success for you, but a greater success for the lives that we've touched. And I will put the right people in your life to make it happen. Of course, I replied, really, God, I was in Mr. Fox's remedial reading class in the 7th grade. Surely you could choose someone besides me. And he said, no, I chose you, because I guess he felt that I wouldn't give up on it. And I don't try to be Holy Ghost Jr. by any stretch of the imagination, but I know that someone, when they hear my story, I'm a credible witness. I've gone through lots of things. In changing the subtitle to my book, Life for Survivors After Tragedy, it was a thought process that came into play because people would say, I absolutely loved your book. It was like sitting down with a cup of coffee and just sitting there and talking to you about your life. But because it had suicide in the title, that their life had not been touched by a suicide, but everyone's life has been touched by a tragedy, because tragedy can be spelled a million different ways, from a suicide to losing your child, to losing your job, for the pandemic. During the time with my husband, so I had my own business as a fine jewelry and diamond broker, but in 2007, 2008, when the recession hit, I ended up holding onto my business by the skin of my teeth, but I ended up losing my house to a foreclosure, and I had to file for bankruptcy. Those are, and you wonder at that point, where do you go? I mean, there was certainly a lot of shame was that involved in that. And so I just kind of took baby steps. I ended up moving in with my daughter, thinking that I would be there for a year. She was freshly divorced and my granddaughter was very young. So the timing for me to be there was perfect. My granddaughter never saw a day in daycare, and I picked her up every day from school, yet I still did my business. So it worked out. But after about 3 years, it was like, okay, Mom, get the heck out of here. That's it. Get on your own.
I'm sure you felt the same way. You were probably definitely ready to let her be.
It's definitely
It's a big job, all that picking up and driving, isn't it? Doesn't
At
seem
that,
like
at
much,
that,
but it
at
is.
that point, yeah, at that point, it was like, get out of my house and I never want to see you the rest of my life again. So, but I didn't want to start all over in Delaware because the address that I lived at was one of the nicest addresses in Wilmington for high-rise living. And so I felt if I went back there, it would be starting the same life all over again. So for whatever reason, ever since I've been 8 years old, I wanted to live in a yellow house in Florida. I have no idea. I didn't know anyone in Florida. Yellow was not my favorite color. I had no idea. But so I just decided that I was going to move to Florida. The book, The Secret, made a huge impression on me because in The Secret, basically you're here and you want to be here. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. You just keep picking yourself up and holding on to your dream and don't let go. And Rhonda Byrne, the author's sister, was in Australia and she wanted in the worst way to move to America and get a job here. And she said she tried everything and nothing worked. So finally, she put everything in place as though it had already taken place, that she was going to America. She sold her house. She gave up her gym membership. She packed up her bags and did all that. And then by the time she packed her last bag, she got a knock on the door or a phone call and said, oh, we have a job for you in America. And she was all ready to go. So using that same principle, what I did is I created a 6-month calendar and I posted it on my bedroom wall. And it was a countdown calendar. So someone would say, oh, can you do this? And I go, well, no, because in 87 days, I'm going to be living in Florida. Had no idea how I was going to get there, what I was going to do, where was, nothing. But I just started to put everything in place. I gave a lot of things away. And the year before all of this happened to me, I was at church and the Monsignor told about the maintenance man who lost his house in a fire and he had insurance for the shell of the house and nothing else. And so what happened is I called up the Monsignor when I had to move out of my house. And I said, what happened to that man? Does he need anything? And she said, oh, yes. So I contacted him and he came over with his wife and I had put, purple sticky notes on different things that said Felix on it and looked at it for a day and took it down and put it back up, and everything. So the bottom line, he and his wife came over and his wife just went nuts. She goes, oh my God, this is ours. Like I gave them a whole bedroom suits, draperies,
Feels so good. Doesn't that feel so good?
washer and dryer. I mean, since it was going to foreclosure, I even had them take out the garbage disposal that was in there. And I said, you need a garbage disposal here? You can have this one, and so he ended up doing it. And so it was so funny because I gave him a whole set of dishes. And I said to his wife, I said, these teacups haven't even been used. And she said, well, we use mugs. And I said, I've got a whole bunch of mugs in the storage bin in where I lived, and I said, I'll get them for you. So I went down the next day and I started wrapping up these mugs to give it to them. And I came across 2 mugs and my husband's name was Tony. And I came up 2 mugs and one of them had Tony on it. And the other one was a Tony the Tiger one. I said, well, this is stupid. I'm not giving him these. So I put them off to the side. The next day, Felix comes back with his son. And he says, I brought my son with me. He's very strong. He's going to help take this furniture apart and we'll move it together. And I said, oh, it's really nice to meet you. What is your name? And he said, Tony. And I went,
stuff. That's
well,
so
what? And the
great.
concierge and I were there. We're going to look at each other going said, what? And I said, well, I have a special gift for you, Tony. And so what turned out to be such a horrible thing for me in the process of it happening, trying to let go, of the things that we bought together and all these things, it became such a blessing for someone else in doing that. So I didn't feel bad about that. And I think that's one of the first lessons that I learned, that if you get, like Zig Ziglar says, if you want to get everything in life, he said, help other people to get what they want. And then you in turn will have an opportunity and you'll get that too. And so I found that my gift is in the giving, whether it's giving of material things or whether it's giving of myself. But just being a credible witness, unfortunately, being able to say I've had lots of tragedies in life, probably no more than others, but it's just we bear them on our shoulders differently for that. But the bottom line is, especially when things happen, especially if you're living high on a hog and all this happens and you lose your house and this, that, and everything, you have no self-worth whatsoever,
Well,
and
society has
that's a scary part.
definitely, as society has dictated that forever, right? I mean, we all need to, it's all about keep up with the Joneses, and it's still like that, whether people pretend that it isn't or not. Everybody's trying to be the best this or the best that, or that, whatever the trend is for what society now is calling, the new box that you got to get in.
Right.
And it just goes on and on. Well, nobody fits in that box.
Nobody,
It's like
nobody.
Cinderella and her big
Well,
fat toe. She can't get it, the sister and can't get her toe in there because you know what? None of us are made to do. I mean, I think there might be some, but I think it's very small. And so here we are, that I found for myself, that subconscious mind, we're listening to and trying to break down those thought patterns for generations.
Mhm.
It's shaming and guilting ourselves nonstop. I had no idea. I thought I was pretty positive. I've, been into this work for pretty much my whole life. And wow, nonstop, just on my third marriage. I should have known better, should have done better, like just, just not good enough, right? Didn't, I made a commitment, I couldn't follow through, like just the constant in my head of those, what do they
Mhm.
say, 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day we're having.
Mhm.
And most of
Most
those are
of them are
shaming
negative.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And
That's-
what are they thinking? How should I do this? Like we're killing ourselves. Right.
We are definitely killing ourselves, and
We're not aware, right?
we're not aware, and with the pandemic and everything that's happened, people losing their jobs, but more than that, people losing their families, that, I mean, and it's a shame. I mean, my editor was the most amazing person I have ever had the opportunity to be a part of. I mean, she was, head of a church newspaper. She was an author. She was so magnificent. She pulled things out of me that I didn't even know existed. 54 years old and died of COVID.
Are you kidding?
No, and my heart is broken. I mean, my heart is literally broken, for that. And I'm saying, and I just don't understand why the good ones have to go, not that the bad ones have to go either, but it's just when someone has so much to give of themselves. If there's anything, I don't want to be the person that leaves behind, and well, the big homes or this and everything. Yeah, that would be nice too, to be known for that I can leave something for my daughter. But more than that, I want to create a legacy as far as making a difference in someone else's lives. And I know that I will never know the lives that I've touched because I just don't know where my book is going to go.
So true. So true. Right.
I had a person call me last week, and someone from California who was a young woman who had a story that lived in foster homes her whole life. And she wants to write a play called The Little Blue Suitcase. And she struggled, and she just wondered, she wants her stories told, but she hasn't had the self-confidence yet to say, okay, let me write this. But if you start to write things down, you're writing them down for yourself. So you write letters to God, and as soon as you do, dear God, hear my prayers, it's gone. You just turn everything over to him. There is no shame. There is no that. You have to just figure out that I don't know why I'm going through this, but God has a reason for it. And we can only see the tiny pieces of puzzles that sits in front of us, and we can't even see all the ones that are behind us because there's so many things that are happening in the background that we don't know about. And let me give you an example on that. So by the time I moved out, when I was planned on moving to Florida, I came to Florida and I got a job and I found a house to rent. And I thought, okay, Florida, here I come. I'm all ready. Got the job. I got the house. I got this, that, and everything. And then I'm like 3 weeks away from coming down, and I get a phone call from the owner of the house, and they go, I'm sorry, we can't rent to you. because you filed for bankruptcy in 2010 and we're not going to take the risk on you. And I'm going, but I have a job, I have this, I have that. Nope, 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 we're not going to do it. So then I was in Delaware and I had to find another house, and I found a house on Zillow. And I thought, oh, this is great. But my sister lives in Florida. So I said, do me a favor and go take a look at the house, because it had water behind it. I just wanted to make sure the water was wonderful. Well, as it turned out, it looked like an infest of mosquitoes that were behind it. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. Now I'm 10 days away from coming to Florida, that I've got the truck all lined up to go. My friend who was a truck driver, he said, well, he lived in Florida and he flew up there. He says, I'm driving the truck down, and we're going to do that. Well, he ends up in the hospital, that he doesn't know that he's in there for like 10 days. They don't know what's wrong with him. He finally gets out the day that I'm supposed to pack up my furniture. Of course, we didn't let him do that, but he did want to drive, only to find out later on that he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease and died within a year after, he drove me down. But then all of a sudden, then I had to find another house. So I found a house on Zillow and I went, oh my God, that looks perfect. I've got water in the back. It's like a 1,600 square foot home. I'm all by myself. This is perfect, 3-bedroom house. And so then the person came back and they go, I'm sorry, we can't rent to you because you had a bankruptcy. So I wrote him like a 6-page letter of my story, of my life. I said, I'm an author, a motivational speaker, this is the troubles that I had. This is what I have in place now. I have a job. I have this, just write me a lease for a year and see how it works. So he agreed to do that. So I didn't see the house until I pulled up in the driveway. So, but when I left Delaware, following behind with all my furniture and all my worldly possessions in a truck, I looked for any sign from God to say, you know what, you're going to be okay. And there was nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. I don't even remember driving from Delaware to Virginia because I was crying so hard, because I had nothing. By the time I pulled up in the driveway, honest to God, I went, what in the hell am I doing here? I don't even know. I got nothing. So I pulled up. The next door neighbor was packing up their things and they were moving out after 10 years. And I go, my God, how can you move out? I look at the water behind my house and I said, this looks like God's country. She said, oh, it's just time. And then she said to me, did you see the cross? And I said, what? No, what are you talking about? So she took me out behind my house. The owner of the house had made a cross out of pipe that sat about 4 feet tall out of the water for the birds to perch their wings on to dry, and sitting right next to it was a swan. And I looked up in the air like this and I went, you put a cross in my backyard? And I go like this, I go, you put a cross in my backyard? And I knew in that moment that everything was going to be okay and everything is wonderful. Doors open up. Yeah, doors open up. I got a phone call like 6 months ago and they go, this is Ultra Call calling. We're calling you for the Zoom call that we set up with you. And I go, who's calling? I go, I don't have any record of any call. I don't even remember talking to anyone. Well, as it turns out, it's a faith-based company out of California, and their process of what they're doing is they're building spiritual entrepreneurs. So everyone in there, their whole purpose in life is really just to be the best version of ourselves. And we can only do that by helping other people do the same. So we have weekly coaching calls and with Ryan Blair, who's the owner of the company. And I have a personal coach that I work with every 2 weeks. And so for that, she's helping me create this 7-step program now.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So the 7-step program that I'm just kind of starting is, so it's entitled 7 Steps to Renew Your Life After a Tragedy. So the first step would be to believe in yourself. Learn how to deal with the mess in your life. Know that when we feel broken, we can be put back together to create something more beautiful. Okay, so it kind of starts there, because at first I thought the first step was going to be acceptance. And I go, wait a minute, Janet. Yeah, your life didn't start with acceptance. You had a whole lot of crap that you had to deal with from the inside and from the outside. And how do you get to the point where you can just say you accept it? Even as far as forgiveness is a huge factor, in there. Because, as we know, the forgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die, or, yeah, and that doesn't always work. So it's a matter of, you have to believe in yourself, but you have to get rid of the negatives. You have to realize that things happen for a reason, even if we don't understand them. And then, so now, and that life is messy. And then that's another thing that happens. So all of a sudden I start writing this program and I get a book in the mail. And the book in the mail, let me show you the book. Yeah, I don't know where the book is here. Yeah, this book in the mail is called Life is Messy by Matthew Kelly. I have never heard of Matthew Kelly in my life. I did not order this book. I never heard of this book. And all of a sudden I opened my mailbox and this book is in the mail. And I said, oh my God, I could write every single thing that he wrote in his book in the first thing of believing in yourself, because you have to deal with the mess that's in your life. So then I thought, well, let me get in touch with Matthew Kelly, only to find out that he's got 300,000 followers, that he's been an author, from Australia for his whole entire life. And I've never even heard of him. And he's probably got like 40 books. And I can't believe I never heard of him. So I went on a mission to find him, and I went through LinkedIn and I went through connections of LinkedIn and everything I could possibly do. I wrote 6 different emails to 6 different email addresses, contacted him through the company, and nothing. I finally reached his, he owns a company, a consulting company that's actually in Florida, and spoke to the CEO. But before I did that, I researched her only to find out that we had first level connections of someone that I've known for 25 years or 20 years. And so before I even started my conversation with her, I go, hey, you're not going to believe this. I searched you and I said, Trish, this person, oh my God, I've known them for, and so that was the breaking point there. And I told her all about my program. And I said that I would like to include Matthew's book in my program to do that. And she says, well, that would be great to do that. She said, and I said, I would like to quote him. And she says, well, just mark the pages in there, do a little bit of blurb, but mark the pages in there. So now, well, first off, Matthew Kelly has no idea who Janet Grillo is. He doesn't even know that any of this conversations have taken place, but his CEO said that that's fine. Eventually he'll know who I am. Not that it matters one way or the other, but just the fact that he is a very faith-based person. And he believes that everything happens, but we need to rely on God to do that. So now with that part, I will be having Matthew's book as part of my first step in believing in yourself. And so then I had another thing that, let's see. So the second step is actually acceptance. And in that one, I just simply said, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Of course, that's by Neogar on that. And so from that point, then I will be, exploring all the things that have to do acceptance. I'll look into other books. I'll get people's outside opinions on things to say, what is your term of acceptance? What is acceptable to you is not, and find out. So it's definitely a lesson learned by me, but it takes a lot of research, because this is probably the most, not probably, this is the most important thing that I'm ever going to work on, because I realize that by time someone will get to the 7-step program, they've tried everything else on their own. They have nowhere to go. They don't know what to do. So I don't want to just put something out there just to say, okay, here it is and good luck with it. I want to make sure that what I'm creating is going to truly, truly help people, but also let them know that there's no shortcuts. You can't go from step 1 to step 5 and think that your life is going to be okay, because you have to give it the time to go through the process in doing that. The third one is seek to gain wisdom. Learn how to find your inner strength to discover that everything you need to improve in your life lies within you. Partner with God and he will not disappoint. And that's a huge one. The big, huge, I think, well, they're all big, but the fourth one is eliminate the negatives. Learn how to accentuate the positives by eliminating the negatives. Latch onto the affirmations to envision the light at the end of a very dark tunnel. And the fifth one is take control of your life. Discover how to create a new life by taking 100% responsibility for the things you can control. Now is the time to take a hard look at your present life, create a vision board of your dreams, dream life, and act upon them, because dreams really do come true. The sixth one is actually transformation. Transformation, take a hard look at yourself in the mirror. Now is the time to see yourself outside of yourself. Set realistic goals and find the habit associated with the things you want to change. The goal is to create the best version of yourself. And of course, we can all stand to lose weight. And so it's crazy with this, because I get a phone call from someone, from this man who's written several books on this, is at his own full transformation and stuff and everything. His program can be expensive, but his books, you can follow his books, his program is if you need an accountability coach. And so in talking with him, he said, I want my book to be in the transformation. I said, you do? He said, yeah. So now I have 2 books so far, but those are the only 2 things that I've worked on so far. So I want to create something. And then like with Matthew Kelly, he's got a lot of audio books, so we'll bring that into it to give everyone the tools they need so they don't have to go outside of themselves. And then the 7th step is purpose with intention. Zig Ziglar said it best. You can have everything in life you want if you help enough people get what they want. Now is the time to be part of something bigger than yourself. And I think, and I just know in my heart that this is going to be absolutely wonderful. And then we can help change many people's lives so that they in turn can make a difference, because again, they need to be a walking testimonial. They need to look back, but it's like, you have to document your journey. You have to know, in order to know how far you've come, you have to know where you began. Yeah. And so that's pretty much with that.
Well, and I think that the journaling is probably, even if you don't know what you're going to write, and it doesn't matter, it's just pick up the pen and start downloading whatever's going on in there. And it is so therapeutic to just get it out, because then you don't have to have the conversation about it with somebody. Then you don't have to have it rattling around in your head. You can kind of get it out and then have a look at it at a different perspective, from is what I've found. So really powerful what you're saying.
Yeah. And the letters that I share in my book from God, even though that letter was written in 2004, so, like so many years ago, I can read that letter today and it was like it was written yesterday. And I think that's kind of the cool part about that. I mean, one of the letters in there, one of the first letters from God is he said, I see you, I feel your pain, and then it goes on from there. The crazy thing is, and here's a couple crazy things that happened that's also in my book, is that my father died June 21st, 1988, and my mother died June 21st, 1999. Same day, 11 years apart, divorced for 25 years. So on one of the anniversaries of my parents' death, I went to their grave sites. And on one page, I wrote, "Dear Janet, love Dad." And on the other page, I wrote, "Dear Janet, love Mom." And then I just waited for that writing to come to me. So back at the time when I wrote it, I was driving a Cadillac SRX, like an SUV. But in 1988, my father had a yellow Cadillac that had, and I say, these big ass fins on the back. I mean, like real big on the back and everything. And the first words that came to me from my father said, "You call that a Cadillac? That's not your father's Cadillac." And I went, "Oh my God, he's here." And then it went on from there, and my mother's words are, it was from, I read the Navajo prayer at her service, and it's like, do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die. I'm the wind that blows, and all of that came up in her letter. And she says, you can feel the wind on your face. That's me.
Beautiful.
I'm the sun that this and that's, and so it just kind of goes on from there. But the crazy part is that I also went to my husband's grave on our wedding anniversary one time. And I wrote, Dear Janet on the top and Love Tony on the bottom. And then I closed the book and I really put it out of my mind, and I forgot that I had even done that at all, like zero thought. And then later, like 3 or 4 months later, I turned to the back of my journal thinking that I was reading a letter that God had written to me. And in that one, he said, I'm sorry for your pain because I'm the cause of your pain. And as I got more into the letter, I'm thinking, this doesn't sound like God at all. And so I read the letter that was so graphic in what he had written to me that when my daughter read it, she literally threw my journal across the room and she said, Mom, that is scary. That is him. I said, I know. So the thing that probably not ruined me, but the thing that the biggest challenge I had to deal with in moving forward was, and part of that believing in yourself is that forgiveness, because the forgiveness will kill you. You're blaming other people for the way that you are, but we are truly the only ones responsible for our own happiness. And once we get that into our mind and take baby steps, turn everything over to God, then everything just starts to fall into place really wonderfully.
Well, and what I've learned is you can't move past it if you are not taking your own, accountability. So
Right.
you're giving your power to somebody else because you're saying, you did it to me. So if they did it to you, then they can do whatever. You're handing over that, those thoughts as you're perceiving them, that person can do whatever they want. Well, no, they can't.
Yeah.
Right? Only if you think they can. So it's all what we're thinking and what the confidence that we have within ourselves to know that we are connected, and we just need to ask. It's just ask and it's given. I actually came to have a relationship myself with the divine, and it's I didn't have any understanding or religious upbringing, and actually really didn't want. I had a little taste of the Christian with putting my daughter in a private school, and really was interested to learn the whole thing. But what I learned was that God was in my heart, and I didn't need to be. Anyway, it was just kind of one of those things that I learned a lot, but still learning
Yeah.
how the whole process.
Yeah. And the other thing too is what got me involved with the veterans so I had the opportunity to be to interview some veterans. And so I was working for Crown City News out of Sacramento. And so I would talk to veterans about their stories. And one of the veterans that I interviewed was a woman that was a Gold Star mom. And so a Gold Star mom or father, it's someone who a child has died, and it could be not necessarily suicide, but it just could be, whatever. But anyway,
I've never heard that before. Had you?
I had not, no. And so what happened is her son had committed suicide. I think he had tried 5 or 6 times before he finally succeeded in doing that, and he was, certainly from the war and everything, and just had a lot of issues that he couldn't deal with. She introduced me to a man by the name of Howard Berry, and Howard Berry's son, he was from Chicago, and Howard son also committed suicide. Howard created a display of 660 flags, because on average, there's 22 veterans that commit suicide every day, 660 a month, and more than 7,000 a year. And so we have a traveling wall throughout Florida. It's a miniature Vietnam wall. And within that display, they also have a display of 660 flags, with a big sign and everything. But was telling my sister about the interview, and she says, oh, I've seen a lot of flags, but I never knew what they meant. So from that point of her saying that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to design a flag that when someone sees it, they'll know exactly what it means. So I got a very large American flag and laid it in the middle of my living room floor for about 6 months. I started with hearts and places of stars and different things and stuff. I went, no, 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 no. So I finally ended up, so it's the American flag with the 50 stars, but I've taken 30 of those stars and I put a number 22 on the stars. And so the 22 times 30 equals the 660 for 1 month. And then within the body of the flag, I have two turquoise stripes in place of red stripes. And in between it, it says stop 22 veteran suicides a day, because the colors of suicide prevention are turquoise and purple. And so after I created the flag, I thought, well, I'm going to give Howard Berry a call and tell him, and it's trademarked and everything, and tell him, only to research to find out that when he died, and he died on June 17th, 2021, I think it was. And my birthday is June 17th. And I thought, oh my God. So for me, I feel it's my mission to carry it out, to continue on with his things. So that would be just like another little aha moment that, you know, that I have to do in order to do that. So I'm still trying to do that. But I often wondered too, in doing the interviews, I often wondered how you can have two soldiers come home from war and maybe they've both lost their legs. What's the difference between one sitting in a wheelchair, becoming an alcoholic, a drug addict, anxiety attacks, and committing suicide, and the other one strapping on prosthetic legs and running a marathon? And I truly believe is the difference in how close you are to God. You know, to believe that this has happened for a reason, and you just have to get out of that woe is me sort of thing, because it's not about me. It's not about us. It's a matter of, in my reading and understanding, that even though we don't recognize it, God has chosen the stronger ones, even though we appear weak in our own right, but he's chosen the stronger ones that won't give up, because we know we can help make a difference in people's lives. And even for me, the job that I have right now, I work at Holiday Inn Club Vacations in Cape Canaveral. I got a phone call one day, and year and a half ago, they said, hello, this is Holiday Inn Club Vacations calling. We'd like to interview for a job. And I went, who's calling? I go, I didn't even apply for the job. I said, I don't even know who you are. I turned it down 3 times. They kept coming back with bigger sign-on bonuses. And then I ended up taking the job, although I'm not allowed to talk about my book or anything, because I'm not there to promote myself for that. I'm just there to do a job. You know, sometimes everyone will come up where I say something nice to someone and they'll go, you know, I was wondering about you. I looked up your name. You're an author, aren't you? And I go, yeah. And I go, well, I can't tell you that because I can't talk about that because I'm not here to do that. You know, but then they, you know, and people send me, you know, gifts or give me gifts or, you know, whatever, you know, just because it's touched God has spoken to them in doing that. But then I just, you know, don't, you know, if you find out about me, it's because somebody else told you about it, that I can't tell you, you know, anything that's going on. But I just feel that I'm there for a reason. For example, one time I checked in this guest and she and her husband were so rude to me. I mean, I've never had people be rude to me, but she was downright rude. I offered them a glass of wine and beer. No, just very rude. They didn't like the room that they were in. So I ended up getting them a larger room with the kitchen that they wanted to have. But I noticed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon that they were still not in their room yet. They were still in the lobby. So I checked on it. They said 10 more minutes. That's it. So I go out to them and I say, I just checked on your room. It'll be ready in about 10 minutes. May I get you a glass of wine or beer while you're waiting now? And she said, that would be nice. With that comment, she took my hand, she pulled me down into her lap. She started crying and she said, I have to apologize to you. I treated you so poorly. We are here to get away. Our son committed suicide last week. You can't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
you know, you just can't make it. And I went, oh my God. And I said, well, I know exactly how you feel. You know, I'm sorry for your loss. And just, you know, at that point, you know, I told her about me, and then I sent her a copy of my book, you know, and she sent me a beautiful letter back. So those are the things that God will put people into our lives that we're supposed to touch to make a difference. And then it's up to those people to say, I don't know why I met that person, or I don't know why I did this, but let me see what I can do with it to help someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it. I love it. And, you know, there's so many, suicides and that's happening since the COVID, right? There's been so much of that it's not talked about at all. It was like, how many COVID deaths, but how many suicide deaths were there? How many people felt that they couldn't see their way through it? How many people, you know, had reactions to, you know, the vaccines that they took? How many people, you know, lost their families because the divide of the vaccine or the non-vaccine, like just the whole thing, and then being excluded, right?
Right.
And then not feeling, you know, a part of it. And that isolation, the aloneness, all of that was so traumatic, I believe, for us as human beings. It was nice to have the slowdown for sure, but I heard a lot about a lot of suicides, and it's not being spoken about. And
No,
it needs to be, and you know what, we can get back up. But I do agree with you. You got to ask. You need to ask. You're not going anywhere if you don't ask for help.
No, you don't.
I ended up on my knees, and I'd never been on my knees. I don't even know how I got on my knees. I was just on my knees, and it was, you know, that was the only place left, you know,
right.
and I didn't know how to do that, but for some reason it was just coming out of me. And, you know, like that was just not even, you know, you know, and so what I found out was that I didn't need to be anybody else. I didn't need to pretend that I, you know, was perfect, or, you know, people, I believe they think if you're religious or you're going to church, you can't smoke or you can't drink or you can't, whatever it is that they think that you can't do. Right. Yeah. I remember back in the day, I think I smoked and drank, and I was like, oh, what if someone finds out that we, you know, having dinner parties and we're smoking cigarettes and having drinks, right? Because, you know, that was kind of the you know, what was put forth to me. That was the perception I had about what you need to be somebody else, right? Well, yeah, that wasn't working for me. But this, I can be totally 100% who I am, and accept that, you know what, I can't do it on my own. I can't. No. I have, you know what, and we are connected, and we're divinely connected, and it's pretty incredible. But you know what, you have to go within and you have to ask, right?
Here's the thing is that I discovered, you know, and I tell it in my book too, is if God answered me at my lowest point, you know, where I was crawling like a snake on the floor, wet my pants with vomit on my face, you know, can't get up, you know, for days, screaming to God, like, where in the hell are you? Or is there even a God? You can't possibly exist to make me go through this. But if he had answered me at that time, at my lowest point, my ears would not have been open and my eyes would not be able to see. If he could say to me, you know what? In about 10 years, you're going to be living in Florida in a beautiful home with palm trees and water in the background. You're going to be working at a job where you're making more money than you've ever made in your life. You're going to write a book. Oh, no, you're going to write 2 books, and you're going to create a 7-step program for people that are going to change people's lives forever. And go, what the heck are you talking about? What are you smoking, God? Because I don't see any of that. Nothing.
Yeah.
But here I am. Because now I've given a piece of myself. I'm seeing the bits and pieces from the responses of people that I've said, and they said, thank you so much. That it makes them think, as you're reading my book, you're reading and you're thinking about your own life, things that you had. My favorite chapter in there is chapter 9, because it has like Ecclesiastes in there, like a time to die, a time to live, a time to die, a time for this. And I thought, a time to kill. And I go, well, my first thought is that I wanted to kill everybody around me that was causing me the pain. And I go, no, that's not what God means by that, and then you have to come out. So I really, in the book, I really get in and tell you what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Even what I'm writing is different than what I'm thinking. I go, okay, let's just drop back a minute. Okay, I wrote this book. This is what I'm really thinking. Now I know that I have to get out of that. I have to think differently. I can't allow any negatives whatsoever in my life and turn every, negative that I have into a positive.
Yeah.
And, the only thing that I lack right now is time to get it done, because until all of this takes place, you need to have income come in, you need to work, and you do that. So I'm working feverishly to get it done. But again, I don't want to put it out if it's not amazing, that I know that it's going to make a difference. And so that's the strength that gives me the things to put that in there to get it done.
Yeah, and as long as you stay out of your own way, right? Get ego out of the way and know that it's spirit coming through and that it's going to be divinely perfect, just like the other stuff, right? So good on you.
If people want to know more about it right now, I don't have any website set up for the 7-step program, but you can go to my website, janetgrilloauthor.com, and there is a contact page within there, and then they can just reach out through that, and then I can get an email through that, and I can also put people on a list for when it's ready to do that.
Do you do any coaching at all, Janet?
No, not at this point, I don't, but that will certainly be down the way in doing that. This altar call is truly the best thing that's ever happened to me. And again, I didn't look for it. It just kind of found me. It was one of those things, but I had almost spent money on lots of things in the past couple of years, and I didn't do it. And then this came along when I didn't even know they existed. And this is really, really good. Because we're all talking about what we can do. And if I have a challenge or something, even though we have our Zoom call and meetings and my coaching call twice a month for that, if I have a question, I just call up a coach. It doesn't matter. They're always there for us 100%, helping you out or giving you a different directive on that for sure.
You know what? That is a necessity, I think, these days, is to have somebody that's not attached to you in any way, who can, you can say blah, 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 and they can, keep you above water with a perception that maybe we're not able to see, or, give us some other, anyway, it's, I think, so important to have that kind of support.
Yeah, because it would say, okay, you said it this way. What would you think if you looked at it from this way? And I go, oh, wow, because you're almost tunnel vision. But then, for instance, in talking about the first step in believing yourself, and then talking about what happened to me and saying there was a lot of shame involved, especially when I had to file for bankruptcy, and then I had to tell my family, I'm losing my home. But one thing I knew I would never do is I would never ask anyone for help other than my daughter, who, brought me in. But then again, she was in a divorce and her husband wasn't in the house. So all of that kind of worked out. So,
well, and you helped her quite a lot. I was in that position myself, and my mom did that for me. And I'll tell you what, that's so huge. It's not even funny.
Oh, yeah.
That's just ridiculous, over the top huge. And I think back to that time now and how blessed I was to have that same situation. And, probably at the time, I didn't realize how blessed. I mean, I knew, as your daughter probably did, but she'll always cherish that.
Yeah, and we're fine. And we're fine now. It's good. We're separated by 856 miles, so but we're good. We talk all the time and have a really wonderful relationship now. But I needed that tough love.
Yep.
I needed that. And for me, losing my house, I didn't look at it like at the time I did losing it. But, I looked at it like, okay, God said, okay, you can't stay here. And it was a comfortable life, so I would have stayed there for the rest of my life. So if it didn't happen in that turn of events, I would still be there.
Yeah.
So I look at it like everything was wonderful. And in looking back, things happen for a reason, of course, but also the timing, because we don't understand the timing of things. But in looking back, all of the timing has been perfect in regards to that. So I couldn't be more grateful for God and the things that he's instilled in me, you know, to help make a difference in other people's lives. So I'm really excited about my past, but I'm even more excited about my future. And I'm not young, I'm 73 years old. So it's like, you know, I'm thinking like, okay, you're really going to start this, you know, when you're in the 70s, but that's all right. I'm perfectly fine. You know, it's good. Why not?
What else are you doing?
Why not? You know, I'm bringing
You're
a lot
doing
of
your
wisdom.
passion, right? You're doing something that makes you invigorated and feel great and enlightens you and other people. And what else are you going to do?
That's
Not
right.
do that,
That's
right? Yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
Well, it
for
was a
sure.
joy to talk to you today. I'm
This is
not
great.
sure how long I've had you on for, but if it's too long, we'll split it up into a couple. But so you've given us your information on how to contact you, and I will put it down with the podcast information when we have your write up about you with the video. And I think that maybe you should come back on and tell us when you get this course put together, what it all entails, because it sounds like it's going to be quite powerful.
Yeah, and I didn't even show you a copy of my book here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it sure is. Wow. Good for you. Good
So I'm
for
really
you.
excited about that, but soon it'll come back with a different subtitle, Life for Survivors After Tragedy. So I will start, you know, promoting that on Amazon and other places too, but it will be part of the program as well for that. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. I'm extremely grateful for everything. And I'm
Yeah,
looking
it was great to
forward
meet
having
you.
here. You bet.
Okay, take care, and let's try and touch base again before like when you get that 7-step course put together. I'd just love to hear about it. And
That sounds like a plan. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
bye now.